doing this work session, we about got everything put together except for a few things that would be involved if we give a raise. What they did is compile all the numbers as much as they could of different things that different department heads requested. Put it in here, but this is the final numbers of this year, Alan. I'm gonna let you kind of, this goes into 14.
Yeah, this is our
Ended up
starting 10/1/14 and going through 9/30/15, our current budget. And then, have you got that? Is everybody looking at the one that's? Yeah, that's it. It's a 4-page report, and on page 4, if you look in the far left column, the bottom figure should be $87,308.81. That's the one that, if you look at that, I'll just give you a little, tell you what all our, what it means. We've got our year-to-date budget that we've put in on the far left-hand column. It says YTD budget. That's this year, the current budget we're working on, which hasn't been passed yet. The next column is last year-to-date budget, LYTD budget. That's our last year's budget.
And do 14.
Yes,
What we just
9/30/14 ending. Then the LYTD actual, that's our actual numbers for the year ending 9/30/14. Then the next column is the year before that. The second year-to-date actual is the year before, the 9/30/13, if you want to put a top column, if you want to write. The far right, the 2 year-to-date actual is our 9/30/13 actual numbers. Our LYTD is our 9/30/14 actual. Then our LYTD is our budget for 9/30/14. And then the first column on the left is our budget that we're working on for this year, 9/30/15.
Now that 9/13 ended the 13, year 13.
Right.
I mean,
Let's see, 9/30/15 would be the first column, then 9/30/14 budget, 9/30/14 actual, and then 9/30/13 far right actual. And that gives us a little history and to go by. And what, Jan, you've worked extensively on it, and so don't let me tell them something that's not right, but the way I understand it, on page 4, that $87,308 is our surplus net income, or actually it's our revenues over expenditures that we're budgeting. And that includes all equipment items for each department. But it's, if I think I'm right, it's using last year's salaries. Right. And there's associated costs that go with salaries, payroll taxes, and so forth, retirement, that was using last year's numbers. So I think I'm right in saying that that budget has all those numbers in it, except for payroll, which is the same as last year.
right, I'm just now.
Does not have any raises, does not have any additional employees
Right.
in this budget.
Right.
The only way to get that worked in is work this down, because we did add a lot of stuff that each department had requested.
And you know,
So, in order to get it, any kind of employees added into it, if we hire anybody, if we give any raises, this number's got to come back down to make it work.
and I did look, you know, we had a surplus. If you look at year-to-date actual, which is your third column from the left, 1, 2, 3, LYTD actual. You know, I told you back when we looked at August numbers, we had about $800,000 surplus, and it ended up $795,000 through September. So since we had an excess of our revenue over our expenses of that much, I looked at the state law, and when you know, the state doesn't even require you to have a budget, but if you do a budget, you cannot budget in excess of your expected actual revenues. So to spend any of that reserve money, I was going to talk to Scott about it, but he wasn't here today, but we would have to budget all our revenue, and then if you wanted to spend some reserve money, we would have to make an appropriation to spend those reserves. And I'm not exactly sure how we do that, but we could do that, I think. Again, I want to pass it by Scott before I say it for sure, because we've never, you know, we don't budget a deficit.
Right.
And so and I wouldn't recommend, if we did do an appropriation to spend some of our reserve money on previous years that's built up, I would probably want to do that with equipment items. You know, really don't want to set a precedent of doing it on supplies and repairs and salaries, you know, something like that. I would recommend doing it on the equipment items probably if we decided to spend any of our reserve money. Because we had some reserves last year that 9/30/14, you know, was a pretty good year. We did spend some items that we thought we would.
We were very frugal this past year. We didn't buy any major equipment and hardly any department. That's probably why we've got a surplus and our general fund is larger than it usually is.
So you're saying, Alan, that if Scott approves, then we could take some of the large item equipment, big ticket items out of the budget. We could put some money in a separate account from our general fund, like a contingency fund or something, and then they would vote to purchase a dump truck or whatever, and to pay out of the so-and-so fund. And we talked about, I think, I had mentioned to y'all one time about taking some surplus.
And, you know, the budgeting process is something, you know, the department heads get their information together on what they need, and then the council, you know, makes a decision if you want to fund all of the requests or part of them, or put a priority on them and do the first few or first top three or whatever. You know, that process is, it could be that when we get through with the process, we won't have to do an extra appropriation. But if we did everything that was requested, you know, we might run into a deficit budget, which we would then have to do what I'm talking about and do a separate appropriation for the reserves, assuming
Does
Scott
that reserve
agrees.
have to go in a separate budget? That'd just be a better way of keeping up with it, wouldn't it?
What we talked about this afternoon was the general fund budget has about $2.5 million. If we get that, and this time last year it had 1.9 million. So the reason we're ahead in our budget is because we didn't spend that much, so our general fund bank account is up. What we talked about out this afternoon with you is, if, say we moved $400,000, put it in the revenue here, in the top. And then out of that 400,000, as we'll see necessary and as the department heads make requests, buy some of that equipment out of that money and not come out of their specific line item in their department.
That's
is
right.
that what we talked about? You said you were going to see.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different than what I talked about, because I talked about showing the reserve as like it was revenue, as a drawdown from our reserves, and then I looked at the state law.
So you can't do it as revenue.
And it said you have to budget your actual revenues. You can't go above your actual revenues. So we would have to, it'd work nearly the same way. But I would say you're right in the fact that if we drew down our reserves, then the council would probably approve each item that came out of those reserves. Yeah, whereas some equipment items you'll probably leave in the budget we're gonna pass, and the department heads would know they could spend on those items out of their, regular budget that they've got authority. And of course, y'all have to approve every bill anyway.
Right.
But the ones that still have our reserves, you could probably meet and say, here's the ones we're gonna do out of reserves. Which you might do all the projects, you might do some of them, it'd be up to you.
And some of
But
the,
we would make the monies available through our reserves, and that 2.5 million, when I say reserves, that's what I'm referring to, is that $2.5 million.
in some of the individual departments, let's say Larry, for instance, had $20,000 in equipment, but he actually needed about 50 if we got a truck or a tractor, which was more than the 20. Out of that 400,000, you might get part of that and get the rest out of his regular budget. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, based on, if the council approves that, you say, well, I've only got 20,000 in my budget for equipment, but I really need a new tractor or a new pickup or whatever, and it's more than what I got budgeted. Some of those things could come out of that reserve in each department as needed, approval by the council. Because if each thing that they request and we put it in the budget, then we're gonna be way over. What we gotta decide is the most important thing in each department.
Yeah.
And that's why the department heads are here tonight. If there's something each one has submitted what they need or told us what they need, well, this year we might be able to get some of it, and we may have to get some of it next year. And the worst thing first.
Right, it's just to prioritize our needs, decide that, I'm gonna do all the projects or some of them, or some of them I'm gonna do this year and put off some to next year. We also have some capital improvement monies, that we talked about. For instance, this job that just came up at the council meeting where it was really a no-brainer, I thought, when you saved $300,000 or $400,000 by doing it now. That's something that we hadn't budgeted, but we've got that capital improvement monies also. I think Jan said there was $200,000. And we've used that during the year when unexpected things come up too. We've never actually budgeted that. We've never set out and said, okay, here's what we're gonna do with it. Because we always have stuff come up that we didn't budget for.
Well, it's just like spending money for the security cameras. We're gonna pay for that out of that money, out of that account. Things like that come up that wouldn't be in our general budget. We have got the money to do it. We just try and run everything through our general if we got money. And that capital improvement does, each year, we do get money to put in it, so we'll get more next year. Sometimes it's 50 or 60,000. Is that right, Jan? Sometimes it's more, but it could be that much.
It depends.
It depends. So there's no set amount to put in that account. It's just built up over a few years because we hadn't spent anything on it.
Now, we got gas profit sharing, or we got that in here?
Jan, how did we budget the gas profit share?
Well, I asked the mayor about it, and let's see how much we put about the same, because you thought that,
We used to not put that in there because you didn't know how much you was gonna get and leave it out.
actually, we put 75. We tried to be on the safe side. We got, this year, 121,000, but since we don't ever know, we felt like we would get some.
I felt like
So
that'd
we
be
came
comfortable,
up with that
like I say,
figure.
that's not a good, and you're right, Tim. There's been times we didn't put that in.
Yeah, I'll open it, of course.
That's up,
And where we need to start with each department, we've got a breakdown of each department. And give department heads to kind of go over what we got in their budget, that being how you want to do that.
Well, last time when we met here, the department heads submitted and talked to everybody about the projects they wanted. And what we have done is, being conservative on revenues, I think we budgeted everything close to what it actually was this last year that just ended. And like we say, we did make an estimate for the gas district. Then we put all those department heads' budgets in the expense columns. So that's what your department heads brought you. And what we've done in the past is spent a lot of time on equipment items, and they have brought you, some requests, and you just need to decide, which one of those projects you want to use. A lot of the salaries and stuff, they're put in as the same as they was last year. Everything else is our best estimate of what it's actually gonna cost us. It's what it's actually,
That's
because that's
based
what
on-
it cost us last year.
The last few years, you got something to go by.
So you don't, and we've got our actual bond payments, our actual things that we know we're gonna pay. So, a lot of this, you won't have to go each item. As you can see, there's probably 100 or more accounts, from expense items starting with the note payable revitalization account all the way down to the C3 organization on page 4. Each council may have something they're interested in that list of expenses, or something they're for or against, and of course, you can discuss any item on there. But except for equipment, which the department heads got up for us, except for anything on payroll, and except for any items that y'all might not want to do this year that we did last year, or some item that you want to add that we didn't do. That's just how you've got to hammer this thing out. And you might want to take it home and look at it. I mean, it's, or have a question.
Most of the revenues were, a lot of them were up, and the alcohol was up from what we budgeted last year. And we budgeted 125, it was up 134.9, 22. One thing that caught my eye, I told.
Now, is that before we give some?
Yes,
That's total.
yes, that's total. That's just the liquor. That's not the sales, the other beer stuff through Walmart.
That goes in sales tax. doesn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
Our sales tax was more than what we thought it was, what we budgeted too this past year.
But our property tax was down 10,000. There was a big jump to me. Most I've ever noticed. Don't know what.
Property tax was 224,000, we budgeted 235. And
Let's see.
based on the year before, it was 234, so I don't know why it was less when it was the same, from the year before, it was
Yeah,
234.
I've actually
So that's
went
what
up-
we budgeted, 235.
I've been up to the county courthouse before and went through it with them before, just to
So
make
I don't know
sure.
what the read, it's not but 10,000, that's still a lot of money, that's a lot of property.
And to make sure, that we hadn't, why?
Yeah.
Could be more people are taking a property tax exemption, low income, disabled, or there's a couple of reasons, they give you a homestead exemption on some of that, I don't know. But it's certainly something I wouldn't mind picking up the phone and, calling Barbara and asking her about it.
Sales tax was up about 25,000, 20,000.
I always look at that, that's that and
That's a
your,
good one. And the year before, it's a lot higher, so.
and our occupation tax, is big indications of their economy here. And,
Yeah, it was over 30,000, which is quite a bit higher than it was last year.
yeah, we budgeted $942,000 on occupation tax and took in $977. Then on sales tax, we budgeted $2,725,000 and took in $2,747,000. So I was happy with that being above budget on both items. And Jan, I don't think there's anything that you put in that was a new expense or anything that it's all based on what we actually have been paying.
Right.
Of course, there may be some item in there you didn't know we were paying, so feel free to, look, as council, look over everything and make sure, you don't have any questions about a particular
Well, we
expense.
had, we had to put interest in there for the 43 sale. I think we put, is it 6,000? I think you asked.
We did.
I think you figured
I
that part.
calculated that.
Um,
I hope we beat that too.
This transfer from 7 cents tax fund, where's the 4 cents that we were talking about the other day about the oil, that Scott had checked with the state on that, we could buy equipment, wasn't that right here? Wasn't the 4 cent oil tax that we could buy street equipment out of?
It was the 7.
Oh, I've got it right here.
No, it's the 4 and 5.
It is,
It's
okay.
4 and 5.
We may have that, it may need to say 4 and 5, I'm trying to think what this is right here, transfer from 7 cents tax. Oh. It's may have been from paving salaries, because we can pay for paving salaries out of that. And we listed that. That's something I could look at.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
4 and
this-
5 cent
I'll
are
have to look at it.
separate account,
That's it.
and those can only be
Probably a
spent
laptop.
for street purposes, as well as the 7 cent. Yeah,
Didn't you say equipment?
sure does.
Never
So
was
what-
doing that before.
What is the amount in that, 4 and 5? Does that
It's
say
about
4 and 5?
$97,000 in
About how
that
much?
account,
Yeah.
about $97,000.
See, we could,
We could use that to pay for street, according to that Attorney General.
What
Oh,
we,
yes, we can, I've already called
Oh, yeah.
them last week, we can pay, I called the league. We can pay for like a dump truck for Mike
Mhm.
out of that 4 and 5
finally
cent
says it right
tax.
there.
But thing is, it's about $50,000. You've got 97 in it, and that's not gonna leave him much money for
No.
that, is it slag you buy from Vulcan, or what is it?
Tar.
Liquid asphalt,
Okay.
yeah, tar.
It's
How
not
much does
gonna
that
leave him
average
lot.
a year, Mike?
So we talked about that Mike could pay half of, get the truck, 25,000 out of the general fund and 25 out of 4 and 5. They said they were a lot stricter with the 7 cent, on buying equipment. It's pretty much for paving. But, yes, we can use, y'all can use the 4 and 5
But
to purchase.
am I correct in
equipment.
saying there's 2 different tax funds? One
Mhm.
that's got 97 something in it, and another one that's got somewhere around
Yeah,
50 or so.
I think I've got August
But
in
one,
here,
only
but
one you can use for
close.
equipment.
I can't remember right off the top of my head how much the street fund's got in it. This is,
What does the 7 cents come from?
It all comes from.
it's got 70,
sale of
70
oil
something in
and
it.
Oil and
yeah.
gas, so does the 4 and 5.
Right.
So you could use
But
either
the
one of
7
those.
was
You
our
could use
initial
paving
fund.
them.
Right.
And
Paving
then they
access,
passed
either
4
one
and
of
5.
those.
Oh, okay.
Since
You
then,
used it
several
for
of
something
those.
Isn't that right?
Okay.
And
I
there's a
think
little
that's
subtle
right.
difference in what you spend them for.
So you'd still have.
You could
100.
buy
There's a
your
list of
equipment
Attorney
then,
General's
you can buy your
opinions.
truck
Well, we got that
all out
around
of
the 4 and 5,
$4
but I wonder about
You
the
can
7.
use these
It's
7
basically
cents to
from
buy.
Straight
what
as
you-
asking, I don't know that for
Oh,
a
just
fact,
straight
but I
use?
think you can use either one
Okay.
of them for actual paving stuff,
Yeah.
slag
I-
or salaries out of.
Well, I know the 7 cent is designated for paving purposes.
Right.
So I would think that you could.
Well, bottom line is we've got
Building a
the money,
street,
don't
you know,
Yeah.
So that's,
yeah,
that's all.
you got options there.
well, one of the things, some of the things that the department has requested may not need to come out of this budget, but may need to come out of what we have our bond money for. That's what us as a group has to decide. You know, like,
Do we have a list of all that? Of equipment needs?
well, we had at our last, copy of our last, at our last meeting,
You know, you got a copy from, each department head of what their wish list.
And you could pass this budget and still later on say, well, I think we'd rather pay that item out of the bond, and I don't see anything wrong with doing that. And it would just relieve our operating budget. Because I know you've got a lot of decisions to make, you know, some items, what comes out of the bond fund, what comes out of our general operating budget.
The, fire station, construction of the
All
fire
that
station.
they've turned into us has been put in except for what? now?
Except for the fire station.
Okay, except for the fire station.
It's in the
So
bond.
this right here is in the budget?
Right.
It's in the budget, okay.
Right. Remember, I thought, when we were going through it, we took that out. You were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that and the trucks too.
Yeah. The reason for it was because we didn't know, like the library, you know, her wish list, she had, furniture. There's some things at the rec center, not saying not needful, but there were some things that y'all need to decide if you wanted to fund it out of the bond money or out of the general fund. Because some things you wouldn't want to pay on it for 20 years.
So where'd you say you put in
The fire station, constructing the fire
right,
station
but
to be
what all's in this budget, all this
everything
wish
else,
list?
everything else.
Everything else is.
Except for the fire station.
And the reason for that is like,
Well,
like Rodney's asked for two pickups. The chief asked me to consider, selling 2 cars and buying 2 rather than being caught like what happened a few years ago where they had to buy a whole fleet of them at one time. What's some other things? Sand spreader. Those type little things you don't want to necessarily pay out of your bond money. Am I right, Alan? Is that those? They're not little things.
Some
They're
of the stuff
big,
we do
but
every year, yeah, that's the kind
Right.
of stuff we do every year, we buy
So-
some smaller equipment out.
Well, you know,
we tried to put everything else in the general
Yeah.
fund.
See any money in here for paving at all? Streets, we're just buying equipment.
We've been using our, I guess our 7 and
7% tax.
4 and 5% money to do that pay.
That's
So,
why,
I guess you'd say if we did spend some of that money out of the 4 or the 7 cent, it might cut down on our money available for paving, would that be right?
Yeah.
But it would cut your amount.
Yeah.
Cut
But
your amount.
we've never used,
Well, did he
we've
not-
always tried to keep, or they have in the past, tried to keep a reserve of about $40,000 to $50,000 in there.
that's why I thought that it might be good to purchase, like the dump truck, half of it out of the general fund and half of it out of the 4 and 5. And that way you have,
Yeah, I'd like to see
Some
it get
left
back,
for
get back
paving.
to paving
We need paving fast.
and working on water, putting in water lines, I think. I have so many people's insurance get down low.
So, like right here, on Larry's list.
Right where he is.
But I mean, I wanna know, he had $20,000, you said 125,000. Is the parking lot something redoing that's in this budget?
let's look at what number would that be on? You see, the rent, like expenses, the rent is page 3. Would be page 3.
On page 2, Yeah, that would be a good thing to look at, is to look at
How did we?
one of the departments, and she's got the rec out, and then see how much is on the budget.
We got,
We've got $30,000, looks to me like, on the
Equipment
budget.
purchase,
On page,
yeah, but
on
she was
page
talking
2.
about parking lot,
Yeah,
that
I'm
would
talking
be
about-
repairs and maintenance, we've got
Okay.
$80,000 there.
Okay.
well, it's on the individual sheet,
Let me get some.
got a breakdown. There's individual breakdown of each department. So what we need to do is look over each individual sheet. Yeah, it's gonna get, they jump back and forth. So Larry, come up here and show me. All right, this side right there. Your request, you got a copy?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a Department 3, Recreation.
Can't find it, there it is.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's what you're bringing. Now, is all of this in here? Okay.
I didn't think so.
So we took this out of the fund money until y'all decided what y'all was gonna do. If they toward the back.
Oh, I know, but basically, it's not like last year, we made exceptions, salaries.
What did you increase in your budget from last year?
Nothing here, about everything that I had,
It's 80,000 increased
maybe I'm,
on equipment.
yeah, that was the difference and stuff like
All
that.
right, let's go over that flag. Last year, in his equipment purchased, we had 30,000 in the budget. We spent, 14, is that right?
13,996.
Yes, oh, right here,
That's right, this is,
14,545.50.
all right. And this year, you've asked to increase that to 30
Right,
for equipment.
yes.
Okay, now tell us what the
The
reason,
equipment, we're gonna need a truck,
that's for,
the four-wheel drive truck we use for, getting our apartment.
It's number 4 on this budget proposal.
I can't find mine, I've got it over there, I've got it on the.
It's 30,000 for a four-wheel drive, you said.
But on the back, I went ahead and asked for a tractor also. I didn't
But it's on the
Big
back.
bag.
I didn't put it in.
It's, I've got a list of it, it's all right. But the repairs and maintenance, this 80, what was it
I
last
was
year?
thinking that was a roof on the gym.
Yeah,
Repairs and maintenance at 80,000, that's what was supposed to be budgeted to do handicap accessible.
That might be good.
Cause the roof thing, I've got 50,000, but then if it's, I've got a note that if it's the whole building, it could be up to 200,000, but if it's just a crack in the concrete,
the roof, I've got an estimate today for 120.
I'll make
That's
a
for the
copy
whole
of
building.
this.
The whole
I'll make
building?
a copy of
Really?
this.
That's if we
That's
did.
lower.
And that would have to be decided, would that come out of the general fund budget or would it come out of that bond money? See, there's about $6.5 million, close to 6.5, probably 6.4 left out of the 8 million.
After paying off the revitalization.
After paying the
Right.
bank about 1.6. So that's all we've got to work with in bond money. Now, if you do a water park or a multi-purpose building, a fire station's approximately $350. 2 fire pumpers is approximately $500,000. You're looking at $850,000 in the fire department just for those 2 items. So your bond money, that's what we got to decide out of the bond money what to spend.
how much you said was left?
About 6.4. See, we had 8.
Right.
We paid First National one about 1.6.
And paid out the 2006 bond issue, which was
So
3 million something. Is this the only two things, Larry, that you, pretty much, that you, and everything else is on that wish list, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's
What it looks like.
right. Okay. So, you know, he turned in a sheet, and y'all think y'all got a copy of it? Yes.
Okay, what
Okay.
of this is actually in the budget?
What?
None of this.
None of this is in the budget.
Because he's got the four-wheel drive truck on here, and he's got the handicap
Some of it's in the
accessible.
budget.
Somebody's back, might be back there, Dan. The truck might be back there.
That's in
Oh, okay, excuse me, the truck.
It's handicap on right there.
Then we need to take this off,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And the handicap accessible where?
I just asked you, I can't remember where back on or not, I probably might
It's
pick
a
up.
handicap.
Right there it is. Okay. So everything else on here needs to be considered.
Yeah, right,
Yes.
consider what we can do right there.
So everything else on here besides these two needs to be considered from
Besides
the
the
bottom
handicap
of it.
and the truck on the backside.
So, y'all will have to decide, each department, what you're gonna do.
It's
That makes sense.
attached to the
Well, I don't know
The list that we
where,
got last time.
well, I know, I can't find it now.
Well,
What are you
we
looking
can get you another copy of
Well,
it.
I've got it, it's just a matter of locating it. Thought I had all that together. Lynn's messed it up.
But this is just the hard working part of it. is
Okay, so
got to
2
decide.
and 4 are in the budget,
Right,
the new budget.
right,
Okay.
everything else. I
Because
mean,
we knew we were gonna spend a fair amount out of the bond money. We had estimated, I think, $250,000. Which
and
it may not be that much. Maybe
I-
more.
I could go ahead and key all this in to that budget, to the acquisition bond, the bond money, and then y'all could cut from there, whichever way, what do you think would be easiest, Alan?
You know,
I could key it all in.
So do you know what she's talking about?
uh,
The wish list?
yeah, and I didn't know exactly how much you incorporated in the budget here, and it's gonna be, and what you thought would be out of the
Well,
budget.
that's where we got really confused
And
this
that's hard
afternoon,
to
and
do.
that's such a hard time today with it.
Of course, for instance, Larry's got, $80,000 in repairs and maintenance on account number 57503. And I noticed the last 2 years, he actually spent repair and maintenance $15,459 last year, and then $49,141 the year before. So I figured there was something in that 80 that was large, something, the roof or whatever, or maybe the
I think
handicap.
handicap parking, handicap accessible stuff.
It
Where
was
was,
in the
where
budget.
was the roof here in this? It's not on here?
Not last year.
Well,
It's,
this is ending, no, this is ending September 30th, 2015. Why is it not? I mean,
because you can't balance your budget and put it in the general fund budget. You will either have, if you do it, if you do the roof, you're gonna have to do it out of the bond money.
Do you have a list of everything that's in the budget and everything that's left on everybody's wish list? Does that make sense? Like on
She probably
Larry's
didn't know, ma'am,
and
'cause
I
Larry's
didn't,
budget.
there was a couple of them that, yeah, I don't have it all compiled in one sheet, but I've got it here. Like, I've got Larry's, I've got, the libraries, got the police right here. The only thing, well, everything that the chief had is on the budget,
Okay.
right?
Yes, ma'am. What departments would be the hardest one, probably, to compare the two and reconcile what's on the regular budget and what's gonna be expected to come out of the bond?
I think that think that what we've got in the general fund is everything. I might have a problem with, I might not be clear on the water department and how theirs
In
is.
red.
In the red.
In red.
Well, no, he just cleared it up for me, it's
Oh, okay.
clear.
Okay.
The roof repair, whatever it comes to, will come out of the bond money. I mean.
That's why it's
about
not
the
in, that's why it's not in the rec,
Okay,
Jim,
okay.
the rec,
We have no idea what it cost today when you got the quotes.
I got it today.
How many do you have to get?
And
Three?
You have to be glad to hear.
And Rodney, the only thing you asked for was the 2 trucks, right, and the tractor,
Tractor, carport.
okay?
Two
They're in the budget, Tammy.
Okay, well, see, that's what I
So
couldn't figure
the
out
only thing
was-
that's
Yeah,
not budgeted in the general fund is the fire station.
Well, then that's,
And the fire truck.
And all this stuff right here at the
We're
rec
talking, we're
center.
still talking about a wish list
And
there,
the
that's
roof,
like-
yes.
that's the word
Yes.
you use on that, is a wish
Wish
list,
list.
stuff we really like to have, you know, what I'm talking about, we just have to figure out what we can do.
well, got the money to do it, that's
Okay,
the
so,
answer to that.
like on Tim's list, he's getting his service truck. He's replacing the service truck, so it's
That
in
is-
Tim's budget to get his truck that he asked for.
Let's see, what was put in
Let's look at the fire.
Tim's, we'll look at the
You
fire.
got an individual sheet on the fire, right?
It's 995,000, 2 pumper tankers.
No,
That's
no,
the
no.
bond.
This right here.
That's the bond.
That's the
This right
bond.
here. Sit down right there, Jim.
Excuse me, y'all through?
Yeah, we're doing one.
Okay, y'all guys take care of that.
On the fire, y'all got an individual sheet.
Fine.
Okay, but let me make sure, this was your wish list, right? Okay, so what I wanna know is if all that stuff's already in the
Yes,
budget.
yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yeah, mine was separated out. I had a sheet for bond and a sheet for, and that was basically the only,
But Tammy's got that right there, equipment 46.5.
yeah, I see that right there. Now, that's about the only big major, everything else is pretty much along the same lines as last year.
Last year, we had 17, so you increased it from 17 to 46.5. And that's to equip the truck. You can get it.
No,
No,
That's equipment.
that's the equipment that I asked for this year.
Okay, I got you.
And-
So
And
that's,
it being,
it's the.
That's not coming out of the bond issue.
All right.
That can't come out of the bond
The
issue is
cameras.
what I was told.
camera, fire station floor right there.
Yeah, that's the ones that said you couldn't, wouldn't be a good thing to put in the bond
Okay.
issue.
But it is.
Now, we
in
gotta
the
be
budget.
careful with
it
that.
is in the budget. If we approve the budget like this, that's what's in it.
Everything.
And that's what we gotta decide is that something we can get with Tim? Everything they've asked for, we might not be able to do. We know some of the big things is gonna come out of the bond, like the fire station or the.
Well, it's not in here though.
No,
No,
it's
it's
not.
separate.
Right,
That's
so that's not even a consideration in
not on
this
this.
discussion.
Not on
And it's
this.
in the budget, and the budget's okay right now, like it is.
Right, everything is in this general fund budget, excuse me, in the water department budget right now that they've asked for, except for the fire station and that list of stuff, Larry's.
For the bond.
Do we need to take anything out of where we're at right now?
Well, we got the money, is that what you're saying? That go with everything they've asked for with the money, what are you saying? I think I know. Well, here, you need,
Right here it is. We're that much to the good, I mean. The question is, is that okay, or do we need to take something else out?
Well, we've got to take, it's not good. It's not enough.
So
It's
we got-
good.
Not enough for what?
Well,
You don't have that list of, that Larry had. Are you gonna, all that stuff that he had, are you gonna finance it for like 20 years on your bond?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, this
That's
stuff's
just
on there, it's just a wish list. I
It's
mean,
just a consideration, because none of that, if you see anything on there that you want
The
to
only
put
thing that's
on
on there is
here,
two things.
you're going to cut something. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
And like where it's budgeted less than what the actual was, how do you make up for that?
Now, let's see, is there an item that's,
Like on the salaries, where the actual was this, but this is what's in the budget.
yeah,
Which one's that on?
And then the salaries,
Oh,
yeah,
who?
are there's a couple of those that,
578, 57801.
Yeah, administrative, start with that.
and then the next one down, there was more actual than there's budgeted, so how do you go back and?
Yeah, that's a difference of about $1,000.
And that one's about 2,000.
Yeah. That was looking at Jan on the salaries on 57801 and 02. We've got actual just a little more than what we budgeted this time. $1,000 on one and 2,000 something on the other one. That one we got actual more.
It's
So
got
must have added
20,000
somebody.
extra on police and
Yeah, we got some more on police.
75
So it's
extra on
actually,
fire.
I was not telling them exactly right. We must have adjusted by, might have added somebody or gave somebody a raise and figured that in. There must have been some sort of
Well, they may
calculation.
have, the department heads may have adjusted, which one are you looking at?
Or we could have used the department heads, yeah.
They may have gone by what their actual was
Yeah.
when they did it and turned it in.
I mean, there's nothing that's a lot different, but I see what Tammy's talking about.
It's probably what, like Tim, for example, he's got 272. His actual was 265, 477, you were probably rounding off.
Well, like this
Oh,
was
yeah,
26,000.
You were thinking of it overtime, you know.
Yeah. It wasn't
Because
actually.
he's gonna continue to have overtime, because he doesn't have enough people.
It wasn't actually to us.
Yeah, and Jan would have done that one, because that's an administrative team. And we may have used, but Lynn, to answer your question, I guess, on, I don't know what it is, that is miscellaneous.
That's for,
Okay, we put that in there because he was estimating selling 2 police vehicles, and that's what he would get for them.
And miscellaneous expense, Jan, we've got a difference, I don't know.
What
We
now?
might have just estimated that on administrative and then miscellaneous. That would be 5, that would be,
Under expenses,
yeah, on page 3. 55201.
it's 12.7.
But the actual was like 38,800.
Miscellaneous just catches everything that we don't have an account
Yeah.
for.
I'm sure there was something on there that I realized we were not gonna have this next year.
Okay. I knew you had worked on probably that one,
Mhm.
because that's administrative.
so we lowered them.
And Lynn, to answer your
Right off the top of
question,
my head, I can't think what it was. but it had to
everything
be-
that, yeah, we've got everything in there
I'll look at it.
except any adjustments to payroll. And we got 87,000
Is
surplus.
that 87,000 gonna have a raise? I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
Tell you fireman,
Yeah.
we got to tell you fireman.
A raise, if we do a dollar, it's gonna run about 150,000. If we hire 2 firemen, Tim's requested 3. If we hire 2, that's another 100. Close to it by the time you add all the benefits. And so that's why I say, even though we're showing 87, which is good, it's not good enough if you do anything else. And that's where we gotta come in and either cut some of the equipment out, some of the purchases out, put it in the bond, or find a way, to do. And that's one reason we thought about taking the 400,000, 2.5 million, take 400,000, put it in a contingency. You can buy a lot of that equipment out of that. one-time purchase. So that'll free up the money that'll cover the other, that'll free up the money that'll cover the raises.
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't know.
That'll free up the money that'll cover hiring any additional people. That's where you're gonna get your difference in money, is that correct, Al?
That's basically right, Wade. If you adjust payroll and if it's 250,000 adjustment, then that's gonna leave us 250, that's 87. So what does that come to about
337.
in the whole?
Oh, he said 87,000 plus,
250.
Minus 250.
minus 250.
Right, yeah. Because we're 87 to positive now. If we added 250 more in expenditures, we would still be $150,000, whatever, in the hole. So that's when we need to make our decision on equipment items, and if we wanted to fund them out of reserves, if we wanted to not do them or postpone them, that kind of thing.
So how much,
Once you make your personnel decisions, we can get you a number that we have to deal with, you know, what we're gonna do.
That's basically, that's money that the city has saved since last year.
That's why our, yeah, Jim.
From not purchasing.
From not doing anything over the last year or so,
Y'all
is the reason
saved.
our general fund went from 1.9 to 2.5. So we're 400,000 or 500,000 ahead. Had we purchased a lot of stuff, we was, you know, we wouldn't be asking for it. The department heads wouldn't be asking for it because it already had. But because we've been pretty frugal with everything, our general fund has actually went up. And that's how come we come $700,000 under budget. Because we really didn't buy nothing this year.
Well, probably the handicap has been talked about probably.
And we haven't done
3 years and we hadn't done it yet.
Oh, we got to do it.
Several.
And that's some of the things we need to do.
Sure do. Got to get compliant.
I mean, there's money to do some of these projects, it's just not showing in the budget until you can move some money around.
So, yeah, I don't know, that's sort of where we're at, and once you make your decision on the additions of firemen and those decisions on payrolls, then we can readjust and see where we're at. And then you can decide on the equipment projects or however you want to do it.
What was you gonna ask Scott?
Yeah, about that.
Well, just on the budget item about how we do it on, if we spend any money out of our reserves, or that we, because we can only budget up our revenues.
Oh, it
If
wasn't
we spend
that.
more than that out of our reserves, we'd have to make an appropriation or do something.
So what does he say? What do you say, Scott?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
I didn't even run it by him.
Oh, okay.
I just knew I read the state law on that, so. We've got the money, it's just a matter of doing it, the paperwork. If you want to do that, it's up to you guys.
So where are we?
Well, I don't have a problem with taking some of that equipment out and putting it into that other and going down wherever to pay for all of it.
Out of the 400,000? Yeah. Let me see. I think you see it. Yeah.
Then you gotta decide which ones.
so you want us to decide that tonight?
You know,
Okay.
Well, can,
no, I knew we wouldn't be able to decide that tonight, that's not, I just wanted to, we had to have some discussion with Alan. See, where
That's
y'all
just
get,
sort of where we're at.
sort of where we're at. Now, there's no way we can do nothing.
in the next 2 weeks, are we gonna be able to approve everything by the next meeting?
See, if y'all want to hire, what you want to do on payroll, you just tell us, we'll get you the numbers, plug that in, and then you'll know how many projects you've got to circulate.
All these years before, you've had $2 million in your budget. So if you didn't change anything, there's already $2 million in your budget.
Should be.
Okay, so we'd just be adding $1 more million extra, because we already got $2 million
I
in
think they were
there.
cut out last year.
I think they were, he doesn't have
They
to
were
be in
cut out
his
last
salary.
year.
Well, you got to look at it right there.
I mean,
Just ask them, see
Last
what his
year.
last year.
he's got 272,000 and they spent 265 last year in salaries.
It was
It's not
three-
in there.
it-
Not in there then.
Last year it was
Took out to
372.
balance the
Yeah,
budget
we took it out,
last year.
balance the budget last year,
Is
so.
he talking about on salary?
Yeah.
Yes.
272, 272, 265?
So,
So see, if we add a couple of people, we're gonna have to increase his salary in his department. Y'all, and that's what we can't decide tonight in the work session, but he's requested 3. And Tim, why you tell us why?
Well, it's overtime, one person on shift. It's like,
How many shifts are there over there, Tim, or how many times, or ever how you word it, that there's just one person there?
every night.
Every night? So if they have to have help, they have to call them in, whether it be fire,
Run by
accident,
themselves, yeah.
or they're by themselves?
And I have one sick, one hurt, one on vacation.
Don't mind.
If they leave.
I mean, if they leave over there, just by itself.
Well, is that an issue?
What?
If, you mean if they leave the post? Is that what you're saying? That's your answer to
Don't
that.
be-
Do what?
They don't need to be leaving if they, to go nowhere if they just want over there, they need to be sitting there to fire off.
What do they leave for? Their meals or?
I guess, or whatever.
And
But that's,
That's for another time.
yeah,
So,
I mean,
you need to go home and go to bed. Take some medicine.
with 2 additional people, keep you covered, everything be covered 24/7.
Yeah.
No overtime.
If we don't have no big fire, it wouldn't be none.
Well,
There
we
wouldn't be no,
Maybe would it be shifts able to
it
work?
would be covered, everything would be covered except for every Wednesday, which we're taking care of that now, we just have to take care of one person.
So if we approve Tim's request for 2 people, we know that's gonna increase our budget.
and Rodney asked for 1.
And you know, it's just going back to the overtime, Matt's gonna have a ton of overtime this week, cause I had one off,
Overtime.
one sick, one hurt, one on vacation, and he worked,
Double shifts.
well, he worked Friday, I worked Saturday, he come back and work Sunday to get him
But if
covered.
we had additional men, that would be.
There would be, still be one there, you wouldn't be paying somebody overtime to fill in on a shift.
We could pay an overtime, you could pay for
and I asked for you to consider making Angela full-time, she's working, what, 32 hours? That's just 6 more hours, go ahead and make her full-time, and then she could float.
it. I'm
Help out
definitely for
more.
that.
Can she, how does that work? Well, cause she'd do your pay scale when she's back there and the other pay scale when
Leave
she's up
whatever
there.
your pay scale, whatever you set her at pay scale, but when we key in her
Key in her
payroll,
Payroll would be out.
we'd key 6 hours to administration and however many hours she worked in the police department, and it'd be charged to each department.
It's the same amount
And put-
per
and-
hour, it's just, it comes out of my budget, your budget, his budget.
Well, I think Amy
Whoever
needs
she
to be
happens to be working with.
full-time working with personnel.
I thought she made more on the police department pay scale than she did on the,
She just makes $9 an hour, I think. Isn't it?
I didn't know that there was ever discussion of difference on that.
You know, that's something else we need to talk about.
But it's just 6 more hours.
Well, that's
That's not.
good name and character, and that needs to be an executive session. You see them thunderstorms? Well, north.
Well, do you want them? I've got, Chief, tell them what, the reason Tim, you wasn't here last time, we talked about, at some point in time, we're gonna have 8 or 10 cars that's going to be replaced all at once, probably. Right now, almost every one of them is going out of, warranty. What's Chief Vickery suggested to us is he tried to buy 2 cars in this year's budget and sell 2 cars. And what he gets for 2 cars, you could buy 1. I mean, let's say he got 15,000 for 2 cars, that's 30,000. If he purchased 2 cars, that's 60. He'd have half of that by selling 2 cars and just have to pay for 1 out of the budget. That's one thing that he's asked us to consider.
What's the mileage on the car?
I have them anywhere from 34,000 to 70,000. And that's another thing too, you know, as the years increase, the depreciated value of what we have on hand right now goes down. Versus, you know, where I could recoup, maybe sell 2 this year and get the 30,000 to pay for 1 vehicle. Next year, I might not be able to get the 10,000 apiece for those same model vehicles due to depreciation.
You got good potential of doing that? I mean.
The way the market is, and the way that I've looked at everything right now, that's a going price is at 15,000. I mean, I'm not gonna say somebody's gonna come up and give us that. It's gonna be, you know, the demand of whoever's. But it'll be that, I kind of rounded that up. You're looking at 12 to maybe 17,000. 15,000 in the medium range. And then on the 30,000 per car, that is not the high-end Tahoes, and that's not the low-end Chevrolets. 30,000 is a mid-range, good, dependable vehicle equipped. Some of the equipment that we have in the current vehicles will be taken out, such as radios and stuff like that, so that we could double use those in new vehicles. But the cages and stuff that would go in these Dodges wouldn't transfer over and fit into a new, you know, Ford Taurus or Interceptor or utility vehicle or whatever.
So what would be the largest, the most expensive item to be replaced as equipment to go in the new cars? What are we looking at there?
Probably the setup of the radio and the screens, divider screens, and then the marking, which, you know, it's not that much. But using the price of the Tahoe, their flat out state bid price of about $28,000, and that's unequivocal. That's bare essentials before you get the list of recommended add-ons.
What's Chevrolet cars?
Chevrolet cars are running around 20 basic price, and then they give you several more $1,000s of add-ons. The biggest difference in them is a guy mine your size couldn't ride in Chevrolet cars that they have nowadays.
In his budget, separate, but in his thing here,
Switch them around.
he has increased his, we had a last year budget of 37, he's increased it to 80. That's money right there. You know, if you don't do the cars, then 80,000, 37,000 might be good. So there's money there in some, if you just take each individual sheet and look at each one of them, you can tell what's been increased in each department. And the reason it's been increased from 37 to 80 is because he's requested about the cars. He actually spent 19,000 this year, but we had budgeted 37. So every department had come under budget this year on everything they asked for. This year they're requesting a lot more, and you know, it's just up to us to figure out, do we give them what we had budgeted last year or increase it? So y'all can look over each one of these sheets and kind of see what you think about it. I mean, I'm willing to meet again any night this week. I can meet anytime at lunch. I'll meet mornings, afternoons, whatever. I'm available. Next week I'll be, the only night I'll be around next week will be, city's off next Monday. Columbus Day. And I'll be here Tuesday, and Wednesday, but not Thursday and Friday. So if we don't decide anything this week, And maybe one day next week is all I have for our next meeting. So, I'm willing, you know, if you wanna come up here individually and go with me, and we'll go in Jan's office and we'll say, I'm gonna work with this. I want you to be comfortable with it before we vote on it.
So the biggest
I'm just
thing is
letting
to
you know.
decide on this, if we're gonna do any salary increases and the bond money, what will come, basically. Am I missing something?
Okay. I mean, we're close, we're just not close enough. Based on our revenues from last year and our expenses, we've done pretty well. Extremely well.
Extremely well.
Yeah, they did
I
do
do.
it last year.
Think so.
Alan and he and I meet about every 2 or 3 months and go over it.
Well, that's what keeps it
You know,
on track.
and Jan keeps an eye on it every
Communication.
month. All department heads get a copy every month, so they know how they're running in supplies and equipment. There's no reason they don't know. They know every month because she gives them a copy of where
That's
they're
a
at, how
tribute
much
to
is
you,
left.
Jan, by keeping them
Well,
informed.
we did go, way over budget the year that they had to buy all those vehicles. That's why it's a good idea to, replace some things alone instead of waiting and buying the whole fleet like they had to at one time.
And a lot of the repairs that's been made on the police cars has been under warranty, that's now coming out, which is gonna be
And there's been a lot of repairs,
There's been
haven't
a lot of
There's been some extensive repairs done. I've had crankshafts replaced in one of them. I've had camshafts
there?
replaced in
That was
four
the
of them.
best vehicle.
Lifters, one thing and another. All of them have had irons replaced because of rubber bushings wearing out on the front. Those are $400 a side. Headlights on the things are $900 if they're broke to be replaced.
I know everybody's wanting to go. Mike, your request of the dump truck, sand spreader,
A utility trailer.
utility
Low boy
mobile
trailer.
trailer.
Yeah.
We've got all that in your budget. What we thought we might, if we were to be able to get a dump truck, we found out we could pay for
Part of it out of it.
part of it out of them. And you did think you might get a good use from for 25, but after talking to several people, they said that's, you don't need to do
It's
this.
not gonna, yeah, I don't think it's
So
something we're gonna
a new one would be approximately what, 40, 45?
Well, the truck is around 37 without the dump bed on it. And it's probably going around somewhere around 10, 8 to 10 to 12, somewhere right in there. But
What kind? What model, what make?
this is a Chevrolet pickup,
Mhm.
or a ton truck, 3500 with a Allison engine in it, diesel.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Okay, well.
I just
It'll
wonder
be
what
black.
you do tomorrow.
It'll be a white truck.
Highway Department.
Had some low miles one time for state service.
And you check on state sheriff sometime.
There's nothing on, I've looked for a couple of months now, I haven't seen anything on
They hadn't been
on state.
much on there last.
Yeah.
Everybody's buying it up, so
Well,
they
I
get
don't
it
know.
before
Well,
this
they
thing.
Got money.
It's not being put on there.
We'll start buying,
There may be
because they
some,
buy from everywhere.
there may be some next month or so. Well, Rodney, while you're here, your request was for two meter reader trucks. Tell us the reason for that. That we added in the budget that wasn't in last year.
We bought two back 5, 6 years ago. They were state surplus trucks, had 60,000 miles on them. We have put 2 transmissions in one of them and fixing to put the second one in the other. They had 60,000 miles on them when we got them. They've got a little over 100,000 on them now.
And you got a local price from local dealership here at Mike's, I think, with those 20-something thousand
21,000
for
each.
basically
That's
it's a new Colorado, I think it's coming
That's a
out.
new Chevrolet Colorado they're coming out with, basic truck, 4-cylinder, everything basic on it.
So see, that's something in our budget that wasn't last year. You know, so that's why we're at where we're at. And if we,
Well, tell all these people, like with your guys, and you and I talked about this, tell them, treat them like they're their own, you know? You've got to take care of them and take pride in them, and I'm not saying they don't, but
They do a good job keeping oil
Reiterate.
change and stuff like that.
keep
All the basic
inside
stuff.
clean and outside.
I don't like a lot having that gravel truck paid off.
See, we finance that
Every
gravel
year,
truck.
that's an option too,
Mhm.
so.
Might be an option to some of them to finance,
Well, that's another year or so, isn't it? What's the payment on it?
14.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, it's sure
Used
worth
every
its,
day.
it is worth its weight. Mike can tell you, attest to that, but I've seen it too much in action, it's a great piece of equipment.
So,
I wouldn't hear, but I think it was 78,000.
that get paid off, that's always an option that you could finance something.
The day before to balance their budget.
Right, it's always some kind
To
of
take on
way.
any more debt, I'll have to pay for it if you can't go and not get inundated with.
Y'all just get with me individually, meet again the other afternoon, night, what do you want to do?
You call it.
Well, I want to know what y'all vote.
I'm for vacation.
Well, I hadn't been on one, so I reckon I'm permanent.
It may take another time or two to get Alan so he can crunch the numbers to get it balanced. You know,
Don't you give him what you think needs to happen, and we'll look at it.
I think that'd be the best.
then I'll get with Alan and Jan, and we'll
Y'all generally know the,
work it out and get
what
back
we
to
do.
you.
We'll see where we're at then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll run it by us.
Reserve money. Surplus money.
Y'all can-
I'll make a motion.
So do we,
Y'all are already adjourned.
Make a motion.
What did you say?